Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's the CD guy, Johnny Z here. Thank you so much for tuning back into the channel, and today I'm going to be talking all things Iron Maiden and the Run for Your Lives tour. They kicked off the tour yesterday in Budapest, and so what I did yesterday here on the channel was share my initial thoughts on the set list, as it was being announced on Iron Maiden's socials as the show was going on. But, what I really want to do is a more comprehensive review of the show, and so I decided to wait, a day for footage of the concert to surface online, which of course it has lots of footage online from the first show, and so wanted to share my thoughts on not just, how the songs sound, but also, probably most importantly, how new touring drummer Simon Dawson sounds behind the kit in his first show for Iron Maiden, as well as other things, some things I noticed or other cool talking points about the first show of the tour, and what we can expect from Maiden going forward. With that being said, let's dive in. Just to refresh everyone's memory, here's the set list one more time. You guys can see it right over here. Kicking things off with the Ides of March pre-tape, Into Murders in the Rue Morgue, Wrathchild, Killers, Phantom of the Opera, The Number of the Beast, The Clairvoyant, Power Slave, 2 Minutes to Midnight, Rime of the Ancient Mariner, Run to the Hills, Seventh Son of Seventh Son, The Trooper, Hallowed Be Thy Name, Iron Maiden, Aces High, Fear of the Dark, and Wasted Years. I saw a lot of people who were underwhelmed by, a lack of deep cuts in this set list, and there were a few surprises here, but nothing crazy. All things considered, I think it was a good set list here, and this tour was supposed to span the first 9 records, so I thought it was weird they only included 1 song from Fear of the Dark and 1 song from Peace of Mind, and nothing at all from No Prayer for the Dying. I assumed Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter would have been in there, seeing that it was a big hit for the band in the UK, and it's a crowd sing-along, and I was hoping for a little more variety from Fear of the Dark, personally, aside from the title track, and so I get why the band have to keep that song in the set, right? It's another big, crowd participation track, but I never need to hear it again, personally. The band also promised that they would do things on this tour they never did before, which really doesn't seem to be the case, considering, all these songs have been done live at some point, but still, I'm in no way disappointed by this set list. We all let our imaginations run wild for dream set lists for this tour. This is, practical, and personally, I've never had the chance to hear tracks like Murders in the Rue Morgue, Killers, Phantom, Clairvoyant, or Rime of the Ancient Mariner live in person, so I'm pretty psyched for that. This was the band's first show without Nicko McBrain on the drums since 1982, and their first with new touring drummer Simon Dawson of British Lion, and I wanted to talk a bit about how Simon did on his first night on the job, and want to preface this by saying I am not a drummer, so, I can only listen and hear things from a layman's perspective here, but just wanted to share a few things I noticed here listening to, various recordings of the show. Simon definitely struggled a bit with the intro to Murders in the Rue Morgue, that intro drum roll, but it's not a big deal. You can definitely chalk that up to, first-time nerves, and so I used to give him some time to get comfortable in this role, and I think it's so great that Maiden fans have been so welcoming to him already, and I've heard from a few people who were actually there at the show that fans brought a lot of signs and stuff like that welcoming him to the band, and it's definitely weird to actually see the Maiden drummer, behind the kit. Nicko was always so hidden. Different drum kit here, bit of a different look, but the band is playing noticeably faster with Simon, but definitely a different sound compared to Nicko. His signature style and sound is irreplaceable, but I do have high hopes for Simon on this tour, and I know it's a lot of pressure, and I like his work with British Lion, but touring with Maiden is an entirely different animal, but I'm rooting for him for sure, and I think he had some really cool fills throughout the show. Bruce had previously described Simon in an interview as reminding him of Clive Burr on the drums, which I can definitely hear. Encouragingly, the band is playing tighter than they were able to do on the last few tours with Nicko, which was through no fault of his own. He was an absolute trooper, no pun intended, on the Future Past tour, and deserves all the credit in the world for finishing that tour. But if the band feel like Simon reminds them of Clive, then definitely makes sense as to why they start with a handful of tracks from the Clive Burr era to kind of showcase their new touring drummer here. And I did feel that the rhythm section, though, was a bit lacking during the Trooper. The signature gallop between Nicko and Steve was so classic, and so it felt a little empty, if I'm being honest, and the last thing I want, don't get me wrong, is for Simon to go up there and, to become a Nicko clone, because that would just sound unnatural, right? But hopefully he's able to master Nicko's single-foot bass gallops, and it's so crucial to the Maiden sound, and I think he and Steve Harris, they already have great chemistry, so I think they'll be able to work something out really cool, and all in all, he was thrown into the fire right away. Obviously not an easy gig drumming for Iron Maiden, to say the least, and so a few first show jitters and minor nitpicks aside, I think Simon did a great job, especially on tracks like Rime of the Ancient Mariner and Killers, and he must have felt all the weight of the world going into this show, and he's going to grow into this role, no doubt, and so I think all things considered, he did a very fine job here. Getting into some talking points about the show itself, I thought starting with, the pre-tape of Ides of March March, only to go into Murders in the Rue Morgue, and then playing Wrathchild after seemed a bit out of order. I don't know why they didn't just play it in order of which they appear on Killers, that being Ides of March into Wrathchild, right, and then Murders in the Rue Morgue, seeing that Ides is supposed to lead into Wrathchild. I would have switched the order around, but that was just a really nitpick there that not really important, just something I noticed. I thought it was cool to start with 4 songs, 5 including Ides of March from the Paul Di'Anno era, maybe a tribute to Paul, who recently passed away in 2024. And I just read recently, interestingly enough, that Paul had sent feelers out to Maiden to maybe get on stage with them at some point on this 50th anniversary tour and to do a song with them. And I don't know how close that came to actually happening or if the band would even consider it, but obviously now it's not possible. And my first impression of the band going so heavy on the Killer stuff and then going into Phantom of the Opera was that maybe it's a tribute, which, it's great to have those songs back in the set, some of which have not been done in quite a while, right? I mean, Killers has not been done live since the Ed Hunter tour in 1999, so it was great to have that back in the set. After getting a chance to hear the whole show, I'd say Song of the Night for me has to be Rime of the Ancient Mariner. First time being done live since 2009, and they definitely threw Simon Dawson to the wolves here right away, and he did a great job on Rime. Bruce Dickinson still sounds phenomenal as well, and it's amazing how Bruce seems to get better with time, and his aged vocals work really well here. One thing I noticed too was Adrian Smith rocking the Lato Earth from the World Slavery Tour. I thought that was really cool, and not quite as cool as Bruce Dickinson resurrecting the original Caught Somewhere in Time jacket for One Night Only on the Future Past tour, but still a really neat callback. Lastly, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the presentation of the show here, and a little bit about the stage setup as well. The band are going with LED screens behind them instead of the usual backdrops, and the visuals are really cool and add a neat visual dimension to tracks like, Rime of the Ancient Mariner, Aces High, Seventh Son, and more. And I looked pretty closely, and the art used on the screens don't look like they were AI generated, which is a good thing. I know Adrian has, been pretty vocal against AI, and I know a lot of bands are relying on AI art now for album covers and stuff like that, but hopefully Maiden never go in that direction. It always has such great art. And during Killers, Eddie comes out, spoiler alert, and, I love this new version of Eddie. It's an updated Eddie from the Killers album cover, and I think it looks pretty sick, with the massive hatchet and the leather jacket and the wild hair. Really glad they brought that classic look back. All in all, I'm really pleased with the first night of this tour here, aside from a few hiccups, that being the first night of the tour. Everything seemed to have gone really smoothly, and Simon Dawson is doing justice to the Maiden material. He's not Nicko McBrain. There's definitely a bit of an absence there with Nicko not on stage with the band, but Simon's doing a really good job, and aside from a few little mistakes you can chalk up to, first show nervousness, I think he's going to do a great job in Iron Maiden here, behind the kit, and really adding, I'd say, some new life live to their set as they sounded tighter than they have in years, as Nicko wasn't able to play as fast towards the end there due to his stroke. But still, with Simon there, it definitely gives the band maybe a bit more longevity live, and hopefully the next time they go into the studio, Nicko is behind the kit, though, because we all want Nicko McBrain still in Iron Maiden. But I think Simon did a fine job here for his first night out, and he's only going to get better in this role as the tour progresses. And, I know some people were underwhelmed by the set list. For me personally, I've seen Maiden about 8 times now, and there are still songs here that they've added back to the set that I'm yet to have heard live, so I'm really excited at the possibility of hearing those songs in person, so they cannot announce US dates soon enough. I can't wait to see this tour when it does come to the United States, probably in 2026, and by then they will have fine-tuned things and stuff like that. And Bruce even said during the show this might not be the final form of the tour, of the show, which is interesting, and seeing what that entails, what they might add, what they might fix, what they might, change the stage show in larger venues. I'd be very interested in that. So there definitely seems to be some changes coming for Iron Maiden on this tour as well, as Bruce alluded to. So I'm intrigued by that for sure, and stay tuned to the channel for any changes or updates to the tour. I'll keep you guys posted on all of that. But yeah, really solid stuff here in my opinion. The band kicking off another really cool tour. I'm happy with the set list. I think Simon Dawson is going to do a great job, so thumbs up all around from me. So that wraps up this video here. Just wanted to do a bit of a more in-depth review of the show compared to the initial setlist reaction that I did yesterday here on the channel, with some other talking points, specifically the performance of Simon Dawson in his first show with Iron Maiden. So please let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below on how Simon did and how you think he's going to grow into this role as the tour progresses. Also, will you be seeing Iron Maiden on this tour? Let me know down below. I want to hear from you. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel down below, turn on the bell for notifications so you don't miss a new upload. We cover all things Iron Maiden and all things Run For Your Lives tour on this channel, so stay posted for any changes or anything new, anything different that might happen on this tour. I'll be covering it for sure. And until next time, it's the CD guy, Johnny Z, signing off. Take care, everybody.